You know, have you ever really stopped to think about that image we have of our parents? It's this powerful, almost sacred idea that runs so deep, it pretty much shapes our entire world right from the beginning. And a lot of the time, we don't even realize it's there.
And when you think about it, from our very first moments, this is the fundamental truth of our lives, right? They are our whole world. I mean, without them, we'd feel totally unprotected, unloved. Honestly, we wouldn't survive. And that absolute dependence, well, that's the fertile ground where this whole myth of the perfect parent really starts to grow.
So this brings us to this idea of the godlike parent. And look, that's not just a dramatic phrase. It's a really important psychological stage for us as kids. It's not that we just imagine our parents are perfect. It's that on some deep instinctual level, we need them to be. Yeah, this belief isn't some childish fantasy. It's a shield. As our world starts to expand beyond the crib, it gets bigger, way more complex, and frankly, a little scary. So believing our parents are these all-powerful beings, it makes us feel safe in the face of all those unknowns. It's a necessary protective illusion. But here's the thing. This personal psychological shield we build for ourselves doesn't just exist in a vacuum. The world around us, society, it takes this private belief and just amplifies it, turning it into this huge shared cultural myth.
And you hear these messages everywhere, right? It's okay to get angry with a friend or even a partner. But confronting our parents? Ooh, that's often treated like a major taboo. All these common phrases, religious commandments, and social pressures, they all push this idea that parental authority is absolute and should never, ever be questioned.
Okay, but here's the danger. This protective myth can actually become a kind of cage. What happens when believing in our parents' perfection forces us to blame ourselves for their failures? What happens when it completely blinds us to the reality of our own pain? To really see the real-world impact of this, let's talk about the story of Sandy. She's a 28-year-old woman who came into therapy just deeply depressed, totally convinced that she was a failure, and trapped by this desperate need to please the parents she still saw as perfect.
This was Sandy's truth. This was her core belief. Years after a traumatic abortion, which her very strict parents had condemned as a mortal sin, she was still just consumed by shame. And because she held them up as these morally perfect figures, she had no choice but to see herself as the one who had failed. Her whole life just became this endless attempt to earn back their forgiveness. And the cost of this belief was just devastating. When Sandy finally confided in her mother about her painful struggle with infertility, this was the response she got. Not compassion, not support, but this unbelievably cruel remark that just twisted our pain into some kind of divine punishment. Now, this simple statement from her therapist, it just shattered the myth. It completely flipped the script. It shifted the focus away from Sandy's supposed sin and onto her parents' very real failure to show basic compassion. It gave Sandy permission, maybe for the first time, to see the situation not through the lens of her own guilt, but through the reality of their actions.
And that moment of clarity, that's the first step on the path to emotional freedom. Is it painful? Absolutely. It takes an immense amount of courage to start dismantling a belief you've held your entire life, but it's really the only way to begin healing. So, this is the internal shift that has to happen. You move from "my parents are perfect" to "my parents are flawed human beings." You go from "I am to blame for their actions" to realizing, no, I'm not responsible for their shortcomings. And maybe most importantly, you go from letting their approval define your worth to this incredibly freeing realization that your self-worth is and always has been your own. And it's so important to understand, this isn't about blame or betrayal. The goal here isn't to punish your parents or point fingers. The goal is just to see reality clearly so you can finally free yourself from the destructive patterns that this myth has created in your own life. So, as we close out, let's turn that question inward. We all have stories we tell ourselves about our families, about our pasts. And it's really worth asking, what myths, the ones you see and maybe the ones you don't, might be shaping your story?